Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. This is one of the joys of the year is coming to participate with AFI, and so I truly have enjoyed being with you over the last few days. My appreciation for being asked to be a part of presenting to you the reasons, the data that's driving the work that AFI, META with Gary Cunningham and AEO has taken on. And so I'm going to quickly try to go through a little bit, a preview about our work. I invite each of you to download the report. We've gotten really great feedback of how people are using this report. Practitioners are using it. Funders have been using it. Bankers are using it, and others. And so again, really urge you to take a look at it and put it to use. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the support from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation that exclusively funded this research effort, as well as the report publication and distribution. I am with the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. AEO is the National Trade Association for U.S. Microfinance and Microbusiness. We're based in Washington, D.C. We have a mission to create economic opportunities for underserved entrepreneurs. We do that work in partnership with over 1,600 member organizations. I'm really proud of that number because we have grown rapidly over the last year, actually, growing from 450 members to over 1,600 members. And I think part of that growth has been because of the relevance of our work. That body of work includes, as I just mentioned, our members who are community-based lenders, as well as business service providers to underserved entrepreneurs in every state across the country, including DC and Puerto Rico. AEO has 3 buckets of work: advocacy and engagement, innovation, and research and insights. Our research, we really use the data to inform our advocacy and, of course, to inform all of our innovation work. So we're going to talk a little about this piece that came from our research. And again, as I said, we really focus on actionable research. It's not a study just to say we did a study. It is taking information that can really drive insights and into action. So the tapestry of Black business ownership in America. We did the study. There's some language up here that talks about why our objectives of the study, but I'm going to be really honest with you. One of the main reasons we did this study is because I was sick and tired of hearing the woe is me Black business story. Just, that's what we always talk about. We spend all of our time in meetings, and they usually start off with a woe is me Black business story. We don't have this, we don't have that, we don't get this, we don't get that. But look at what we do have. I wanted to change that conversation, change the framework of that conversation. And so that really is what drove us moving into looking at this research and the resilience and all of the greatness that is there in terms of this tapestry of Black business ownership. So if you think about what the report actually does, it really does present not only information about Black business or business ownership for Blacks as it relates to wealth, as it relates to job creation. It does talk about the strength and the resilience, but it points out also issues around myths that we needed to bust loose, right? I've been told in places that, well, Blacks are only self-employed because they're pushed to. They are pushed there because they don't have other options. They can't get employment. No. That's a myth. The research bears it out that Blacks are just as motivated, and we're going to look at some data that says maybe they're even more motivated to start businesses on their own for lots of reasons, but being pushed because they have no other choices didn't even make the top 12 or 13 reasons why blacks start businesses. And again, you'll find all of those reasons actually listed in the actual report. The report overview also talks about the different sectors where businesses, black-owned businesses, are located. And so we give, again, kind of a real landscape of where they are. The report, of course, lays out some of the barriers and challenges that we found in the report. And then it moves into some modeling. What could it look like? This is what it looks like. What could it be if we were to change some of the systems and policies that affect these businesses? So, of course, there is, new news. What's the point of doing research if all you're doing is kind of like saying all the old stuff? And so we wanted to make sure that we could pull out some new news as it relates to what we were finding with black-owned businesses. And so 2 particular points that I want to talk about in terms of new news. And forgive me if I look strange, because I'm looking at that, and I'm also reading the slide through the mirror in the window, which is backwards to me. So, if I look like, okay, what am I doing? That's because I'm reading backwards the actual slide on the screen, so I can see the screen. One set of new news, the category, let's call it just wealth, what we found around blacks' business ownership and wealth. So regardless of what this says, I might go out of order because I actually can't see it. Regardless of what that says, what we found, what we know is that business owners, overall, business owners hold twice as much wealth in general than non-business owners. For blacks, what we found was that black business owners hold 12 times the wealth than black non-business owners. 12 times more wealth than black non-business owners. But maybe more importantly, what we found, we know that on average, white adults have 13 times more wealth than black adults. When we compare black business owners to white business owners, that number drops down to 3 percentage points. Just think about that. We're all talking about how we close the racial wealth gap. It goes from a differential of 13 percentage points down to 3 when we're comparing ownership of wealth of black owners versus white owners. So we think that's a real case to make in terms of looking at the policies and programs and services that should be brought to bear, just if you want to talk about closing the wealth gap. In many ways, so much of the issues in the black community, whether we're talking about health, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking, almost any subject, you can always trace it back to the problem. The starting problem is the lack of wealth. And so if we could just stop the program now, forget the rest of the research, and just focus on, we need to do black business development because we want to close this wealth gap. But there is more and other new news. I mentioned this wealth piece, this one last, one of the professors that we used in this study, Derek Hamilton, thank you. Derek Hamilton we commissioned him to do some of the research, all the research related to our wealth work in this study, wealth piece in this study. And, again, this is our work. So AEO's been around since 1991, 27 years. And so we always talk, this is not new conversation for us to talk about wealth, et cetera. But people would challenge us, right? Like, oh, it's because business owners have more wealth because they start off wealthier. No. Again, using the research that we commissioned, the original research we commissioned through Professor Hamilton, we discovered and were able to find that that's just not true. Starting with looking at people's starting wealth, whether they were self-employed versus wage employed, over a 5-year period, if you were a business owner, your wealth accumulated faster as well as it increased. And so again, it's a myth to say, yeah, business owners are wealthy, it's because they start off with more wealth. Again, it's just not true. One of the other pieces of new news, I mean, we all know that there are some barriers that, obviously, that blacks face in starting and growing their businesses. One of those is this wealth gap that we've just been talking about. Blacks in general don't start off with wealth that many others who are business owners start to actually be able to start up their businesses, friends and family money, et cetera. We don't have that. And those who don't actually have friends and family have a much better chance of going and getting credit, accessing credit. They might have collateral, they have banking relationships already, they have other things that allow them to move forward in credit. And then they don't face some of the bias that in discrimination that is historical or that is unconscious. And so what we found is that all three of these things, we call this other one around the bias and stuff around, we call that trust. So we recognize that there is a wealth gap, a credit or capital gap, and what we're calling this trust gap. Each of these on their own is a real challenge. But what we found in the new news in our report is that we believe it's the interplay of these three that really keeps black businesses from reaching their full potential. We know that you can give people credit. And there have been credit and capital programs all over the place. Some work, some don't. For lots of different reasons that we don't have time to go into today necessarily. But what we found out is that even with giving folks capital, they don't actually get to go as far necessarily as they potentially could. Blacks tend to also, because of the sense of lack, they don't have resources or enough or sufficient resources, we tend to hold things closer to the chest. We don't trust to share. Now again, lots of historical reasons why that we can't go into today, but just think about it. We hold things close to the chest. So what does that mean? It means, and its implications on business, is that we're less likely to join the kinds of networks that are going to move our businesses forward. It means that we're less likely to form strategic alliances that allows businesses, other businesses, to grow. And so this issue of trust becomes a real serious issue in terms of how do we, again, move businesses forward. And so capital doesn't address that, right? Capital doesn't make us feel like, oh, okay, now I got some money, I can go and have a strategic alliance because of other issues that are going on. So again, it's this interplay of these three barriers that we think is important. Now, I just talked about one way the trust issue manifests itself in black-owned businesses. But of course, we could go down a long list where it's the bias and the unconscious bias and the real discrimination of policies and structural racism and all those things that keep banks from making that loan. Or when they do make a loan, they make it for less than what you asked for. And you take it because you need the money. But again, it keeps you from actually being at your best and growing the business. So again, that's part of the new news. I just wanted to show this one up here. You know, it's not off topic, but we're not going to talk long about this, but it's just to illustrate that point. You know, again, people assume that blacks don't start businesses or whites start more because whites have more businesses. But look at this slide. I hope I'm talking about the right slide. I think that's what it says. This slide shows, I think, that blacks actually start more businesses than others, right? They don't last. We don't get the resources and the help and these issues to make them grow, to make them stay, to make them thrive. But we start more than any other group. It's just, I get carried away because we don't know this. We keep saying the opposite, but we do. Look at this. We start more than anybody. but we die on the vine, we die on the runway, we don't get to take off, however you want to say it. That's the reality, and that's what we're trying to fix. But here's the good news. Here's the other real good news. This is the landscape. This is what we look like. We are creating this kind of volume in our businesses. We are starting businesses. We have this many businesses out there. We're creating jobs, and most of those jobs are in the Black community. In fact, out of all Black employment, 1/5 of that employment is through Black-owned businesses. 1/5 of all Black employees are in Black-owned businesses. So we're contributing to the economy. The numbers, as they say, speak for themselves, and unfortunately, I actually can't see that. So you all have to read what the numbers are, because I didn't bring my notes up here. And so those numbers, I think, are significant, and that's why we call this report talking about in terms of uncapped potential. Because if that's our starting point, just think about what it looks like, what we could do. So I'm going to talk a little bit quickly about what we think we could do. So in that circle that I just showed you, yeah, I could go backward. So in this one, you'll see, I think, in here, that 96% of all Black-owned businesses are sole proprietors. They have no employees, right? They're sole proprietors. 4% of Black-owned businesses are employer firms. And so what this does is we began to look at how do we model the future, what could be, and we've done some modeling that will blow you away. This is just the first piece, and we're going to leave it here for this presentation. But what we've tried to do is to say, how do we get to employer equity, employer parity with Black-owned firms? So on average, across America, white businesses have 11 employees on average. Black-owned firms who have employees average 9 employees. What if we were to bring Black firms up with employer parity so that they too would have 11 on average employees? So in this model, what we did was we said if 15% of non-employer firms were to hire one person, just 15%, I think it's 300 and some thousand people is 15% of all the firms, right? If 15% of those sole proprietors just added one, and the 4% of employer firms added 2 employees, we would create an additional 600,000 jobs. If we create an additional 600,000 jobs added to the current number of employees that Black businesses hold, we would drive employment for Blacks. 1 out of 3 Blacks would be employed. That would drop Black unemployment down to 5%. Now I'm talking labor statistics, not what's real in our communities that you know, but labor statistic-wise, we would drop Black unemployment down to 5%. Economists say 5% is full employment. Saquon, where are you?
Right here.
That's why I said yesterday that it's full employment. So now you get to hear the full explanation. We would reach at least, again, kind of politically, full employment by driving unemployment in the Black community to 5%. We would generate probably another $500,000 to add to the economy, and so $55 billion to the economy, and so this sounds doable. We're talking about not every Black-owned business having to increase, right? Having to hire a lot of people. 15% hire 1, the 4% hire 2. We should be able to figure out how to do that. I'm not saying that it's super easy, but it's doable, people. If we get the right policies, the right businesses, the right programs and innovations, this is doable. We should be able to figure out how to make this happen. Just quickly, this slide gives you a perspective around gender in the Black business community. Women actually own more businesses than men, but as you can see, and again, I can't see the numbers, but as you can see in this slide, women's businesses' revenues are much smaller on average than male business owners. The employee percentage is different. But regardless of the gender, look at those median revenues. They're awful. They're appalling. They are appalling. And so it's no way you can't tell me we can't change these numbers. We can do something about Black business development because we got a lot of room to grow. We got a lot of places that we can rise to in making the situation better. So to quickly hurry up and finish this, the report also begins to provide, in the back of the report, or toward the end of the report, it provides a number of possible options and solutions that people can begin to address, whether it's addressing it from helping these businesses to gain more revenue, and that's the real magic, right? Businesses will hire as they grow. If they can grow, they grow their revenues, they use those revenues to grow and hire. And so finding ways to help businesses generate more revenue is key. Helping businesses, Black-owned businesses, go into higher revenue producing sectors is also key. You'll find in the report a segment on how we've segmented Black-owned businesses into the various sectors. Blacks are heavily in low revenue producing sectors. And so again, a lot of that goes back to starting wealth. We don't have the money, we don't have the wealth resources for licensing, for credentialing, for being able to start up a business that requires equipment that costs a lot of more money. And so again, this wealth issue always, I think everything probably goes back to the issue of starting wealth, and we don't have it. But there, again, a number of options and ideas about how to begin to address this gap. So that's the report. Susan asked me quickly to also talk about, okay, what are we going to do about it? And so, as you heard Edward describe, AEO, AFI, and MEDA took one approach to try to hold these meetings to get philanthropy to embrace at a stronger pace, supporting Black business development as one of your areas of support. If you go to a webinar that I was part of with AFI not too long ago, a few weeks, it seems like, ago, it's on their website or will be on their website. You heard me talk about what I think funders should do, because I blame a lot of you in the room about some of these problems, because when you do give money, sometimes you add to the fragmentation and the problems that we are experiencing in the community as practitioners on how to address this problem. And then many of you, as you all well know, some of your institutions just don't fund in this area. But there's an asset reason to fund, there's a women's reason to fund, there's a family economic, almost anything you can find in your program areas, you could find a way to support Black business development, and we would urge you to do that. But what else we're doing? So we're doing these pieces around helping philanthropy know more, understand, learn together, and share a strategy around Black business development. But we're also addressing it from a perspective of CDFIs, community development financial institutions, nonprofit lending organizations, and helping them to do their work better, quicker, faster, if you will, in terms of how they work with these businesses. One of the things, and we have a lot of research on our website that I invite you to go to. This report is, this slide is part of a bigger research effort that we did several years ago that looks at, we looked at a broader issue, but one of the pieces of that work showed that when businesses, this wasn't necessarily Black, but it's relatable. When businesses receive capital and trusted guidance, or what some of you know as technical assistance, when businesses receive both of those supports from a strong, good nonprofit organization like a CDFI and others, their business revenues grew by 38 percentage points, more than the ones who did not receive those services. So again, investing in and supporting this work through nonprofits, through CDFIs, is a really good strategy that can help us grow these revenues so that we can grow wealth and we can change jobs and job employment. I actually can't read this one, so the point is that a lot of our work is working with CDFIs. We have the largest network of CDFIs, the most diverse and the largest network of CDFIs in the country. There are currently, I think, about 41 CDFI small business lenders in our what's called Tilt Forward network, and then 4 or 5 trusted advisory groups who are in that network. And that network will be part of AEO's next piece. We are launching at our conference, and I have a board member here who I'm sure would be very upset with me if I didn't mention our conference. AEO is having its 2018 conference in Detroit, April 30th through May 2nd. Go to our website, sign up, come, join. We have partners on this room who are speaking. Our partner, JP Chase, is here somewhere. I don't know where Ted is, but they are our signature sponsor for this conference. And I mentioned the conference only laughingly, but seriously, because at this conference we will launch the Tapestry project. So the Tapestry project is AEO's next kind of iteration from the Tapestry report. We're going to take our own advice and launch an initiative to try to address, again, this interlinkage of the wealth, capital, and trust gap. Funded initially with W.K. Kellogg Foundation and First In Partners, W.K. Kellogg Foundation and JP Chase. We will launch this as almost like a collective impact-like initiative. We have a number of partners, including Meta and Effie and some others, a bunch of others. I think the Atlanta project of thank you so much. Annie EKC is part of it. I mean, so we have a lot of folks who are coming on board and joining this work. It is an effort, again, to figure out how do we create new models. AEO will serve as innovation. When I gave you the screen about who AEO is, our biggest portfolio of work is in innovation. We're creating new products that are better fit. One of the reasons that Blacks don't get access to the credit, when they do, the products don't fit. So don't fit their needs. So we're crafting and licensing and bringing to the marketplace new credit products, new capital products for Blacks that, based on a segmentation study that we've done that looks at where are the different Blacks in segmented businesses, sectors, and what kind of credit product would match that better. And so we're launching some of that stuff at the conference as an innovation hub for the Tapestry report. Anyone who's participating in the Tapestry project, anyone who's participating in that will have access to all of our innovations. We have some other things that we're doing that I think you might hear some from Ted, because again, JP Chase is a strong partner with us in our innovations work. And so there's more to this piece. In closing, I would just, again, kind of, hopefully this information, there was some new news for you out there, and there's enough here to incite you to do more. And that's really the message. There's another report that you have in your app, I think, that is called Reimagining Technical Assistance. And I realize that's where some of you will focus. You'll focus your grants to, the nonprofit organizations who are providing assistance. Again, it is a fragmented part of our industry. It is a costly part of our industry that is super ripe for innovation. It is a great place for funders to be because we need to drive transformational change. And regardless of reasons why, nonprofits need to be incentivized by their funders to make change. When you are tight and limited with capacity and limited with resources, you are less likely to adopt anything new and try new things unless your funder is in your corner. We need you in the corners to be behind making this transformation that our industry needs to make if we're to change these numbers. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Edward.